Welcome to Solutions, where listening will leave you inspired by solutions to issues you or others you know may be struggling with in the public education system today. I am Olivia Wall, and I am so very fortunate to introduce you to my guest, Casey Boyd. Casey is known to her loyal fans and followers also as the Boss Librarian. Casey can be described as a school library activist, keynote speaker, book reviewer, and blogger. Yet, I feel the need to give her more of a proper introduction. Casey Boyd is a certified school library media specialist and has been for over 20 years. She's worked both as a district librarian for Chicago Public Schools as well as East St. Louis school districts. Casey's currently working for the Washington, D.C. public school system. She was a former coordinator for Chicago's Mayor Richard Daley Book Club for middle school students. She was a former creator and producer of the award-winning Wendell Phillips Academy High School's Behind the Pause Students News program. Casey has been featured in Education Weekly, School Library Journal, PBS NewsHour, American Libraries, Library Journal, and Medium magazines. Casey represented the first library media specialist track at the Future of Education Technology Conference in 2020. She appeared on the cover of School Library Journal magazine in 2014 and most recently has been highlighted in the article Ace Advocate. Casey Boyd is 2022 School Librarian of the Year. Woo-hoo! The article is written by Andrew Bald, and the honor has been well earned by Casey Boyd. Casey, I am humbled and excited to have you as a guest. You have so much to share, and we have so much to learn from you.
Thank you for inviting me, Olivia. Glad I'm here today.
Casey, I love to kick off each episode by asking guests who is an inspiring educator in your life. If you could name someone that's really inspired you over the years, who would it be?
Definitely my parents. My late father was a 37-year veteran of Chicago Public Schools,
Wow.
and he was a science teacher and actually worked in middle school just like I'm working in right now. My mother retired from Chicago Public Schools as well. She started off as a science teacher and then she ended her career working as a computer instructor teacher. And she was like one of the first teachers within the district to implement IBM computers. So that kind of tells you how far back she goes in terms
Yeah.
of technology. So we had technology in the home. We always had science that just matriculated across anything that we did as kids with my sister and brother and I. So yeah, that was my parents. My parents were just the biggest influence of education, in my life. Hmm.
So, Casey, I have been enamored and followed you for a very long time. And I reached out because of the article that was published. Yet, one of the quotes on your website really strikes a chord with me. I want to read the quote. It is your words. Our students have the educational right to have access to a robust, well stocked school library program run by a certified school librarian, regardless of zip code. Those words ring so very true.
Hmm.
And one of the main focuses of the podcast is to name an issue that I see as a trend all over the world and then find guests that have advocated for solutions. You've advocated for so many issues that I've seen. And just to name them for guests, systemic racism, equity divides across multiple levels that limit access to information and resources, a lack of support and overall value for the impacts of school librarians. You fight, you advocate, you show up. I don't know where you get the energy you have. I have so much to learn from you that this will actually be a two-part interview, two episodes that I'm going to offer. The first part, what I'd like to focus on is your journey that's led you to where you are today. The second part of the interview, I'd like you to speak much more to how you balance your various roles and cultivate the collections you have, especially with the focus on technology and the digital literacy work that you do. So let's jump right in if you're ready.
Sure,
Here we
sure thing.
go. I'd love for guests to learn about your story and what inspired you to go into teaching.
Well, it was my late father. When you are a teacher's kid, a TK kid,
Hmm.
the last thing you want to do is work in education because you hear the frustration that your parent brings home every day, bringing into the home. And because I am the child of two educators, sometimes those conversations drifted to the kitchen table. And we automatically heard these conversations, my siblings and I. And it just kind of made you say, I want to do something different, in which I did when I started out in undergrad. And what made me shift was there was a stall in my career working in corporate America. I worked for FedEx. I was a corporate recruiter, and it was a little bit of a stall. There was change in job description. I wasn't exactly excited about it, and that's when my father swooped in and said, "You know what you need to do is you need to go into education." And I was
Yeah.
like, "I do not want to be a teacher." I said, maybe fourth grade, but that's about it. And I was getting ready to really work in fourth grade. And then my father said, I have a better idea. Why don't you talk to my librarian at my school? The librarian at my father's school, Mrs. Campbell and my father worked together for years, I think 30 plus, if anything. So as a science teacher, he was always relying on Mrs. Campbell for a lot of different things, to support teaching in his classroom and, of course, science fair. And I would talk to her, I talked to my dad, and I was like, "You know what? This would be a good fit because I love reading," you
Yes,
know, and that's what happened,
that's
and I've
wonderful.
been in the library ever since.
When you were the librarian at Wendell Phillips Academy in Chicago, in Andrew Bald's words, you transformed the reading culture. You helped the school go from second to last ranking among schools in Illinois when you arrived in 2010 to
Mhm.
earning an excellent standing by 2014. How'd you do that?
Well, it was a team effort. It wasn't just me.
Mhm.
We were part of a reconstituted system in Chicago Public Schools at that time, and the entire staff was new. We all had a focus. The principal really was the driving force with this because he said, "Listen, you all are going to respect one another, and if you don't understand what the other person's role is in this education hub that we are within, then we're going to learn from one another." And a lot of these first year teachers never worked with a librarian, and some of the veterans never worked with a librarian. So it was an opportunity for me to really talk about how important the school library program is, and to also, most importantly, show them. So
Mhm.
that's what happened, is that it was a twofold effect. I had programs and initiatives, resources for the teachers. And then I actually worked with the teachers. And because we worked together as a team, that's how we were able to move those scores. And we were able to take that negative connotation off of the school that had it for over 20 years.
Can you say more when you say you work together as a team, through what aspects? Talk more about that.
It was instruction mainly and supportive instruction. Like, we had a population of students with a lot of IEPs, 504 plans, and providing materials and resources that would be able to enhance and to provide a more robust lesson so that the students would be a little more engaged and understand what was being presented to them. And then the second part of it is I really push the importance of independent or leisure reading with students. I am a huge fan of Dr. Keith Curry Lance and Dr. Stephen Krashen, which they both promote this and they're not librarians. They talk about how important it is that kids are just leisurely reading. You just let them read anything that they want to read. Now,
Yes.
that was the toughest part working with the staff, is that they felt that they should direct the kids in their reading. And I was like, no, you never do that. You just let kids read what they want. And that's how you get them to become more avid readers. And when you put material in front of them, such as a standardized test, they have a longer and higher tolerance to sit there and read the material and
Yeah.
to go through it. So that was where we really made the difference together.
Can I ask too, I know that time is so short in the school day.
Mhm.
When did you have those meetings? Are you doing it during collab time, or is it before, after school? How are you finding the time to do that?
It was collab time. It was before, after school, sometimes during lunch, and
Yeah.
sometimes it was just any opportunity that we had throughout the given school day to talk about something. Sometimes it was merely a 5-minute conversation in the hallway.
Yeah.
So I was just very grateful that I could get face to face time with the teacher because they're so incredibly very, very busy throughout the course of the school day. So I was very appreciative of that because it made my job easier.
In other school districts I'm working with, it's critical that there's transparency with curricula,
Yeah.
in that it's public, it's out there not just for staff members, but for families to see. And I can't imagine how significant that would be in your role to have access to what is being taught. So you don't have to have the face to face meetings all of the time, but having it up on a platform per se. How do you share curricula options in your district currently?
I can speak what my school is doing. My school sends out every week. We have a weekly bulletin that the
Mm.
principal sends out to the teachers as well as to the parents, and they're two separate bulletins. And in that bulletin, there is a breakdown of what is being taught in the class, so that parents will know. And it's also a nice checks and balance system, so that if the parents want to question their child about, okay, in math, you're being taught this, tell me something about what you learned this week,
Yes.
so that is our transparency document that we are using currently.
That's exactly what I was wondering about, and it's a
Mhm.
lovely access point for the homeschool connection, as well as you're saying that parents can know what's going on and have questions to ask. You also led the rebuilding effort of 8 libraries for schools where 100% of the students lived below the poverty line, and that's when you were the lead librarian of East St. Louis School in District 189. How did you do that?
Very carefully. It was about the toughest thing professionally that I had to do, because there was no culture of
Mm,
reading in this district. My former principal of Phillips High School became the assistant superintendent of the school. And in a year in, he said, would you be willing to come down here and
wow.
establish library programming? Because this is like something I've never seen before. And I said, yeah, I'll come down. I came down for 2 years. The first year, it was just getting the books into a system, getting some order. And then after that, we actually had the books and we started pushing the books out to the kids like crazy. And that's when it was just awfully beautiful just to see kids getting excited about reading. So we had like three hurdles. It was students, it was staff, and it was parents. And just getting them to understand how important independent leisure reading is and how it impacts the student as a whole, not just academically, but on a social and emotional level as
Absolutely.
well.
Absolutely. I wanna pick your brain. In our household, books pour out of the walls. They're
Mhm.
everywhere, the hard copy, soft copy books. What are your thoughts on digital books?
I think digital books have a place because there's an ease of convenience. And then also it meets the needs of a variety of different types of learning styles. I think that it is can be very helpful. In my case, my school is 1-to-1. And because my school is 1-to-1, sometimes there'll be 10 minutes left in the class period and the class has completed all the work, they've done their exit ticket, and the teacher will say, okay, open up Sora, which is a reading app, and it's aligned with Destiny Discover. Open the Sora app, and I want you to do 10 minutes of power reading.
And we know John Guthrie's
Hmm.
research speaks to kids need to read 67 minutes a day. That is the magical number. And it's not all at once, it can be across the day, various content areas. And when you say one to one, just to clarify for listeners, every child has their own computer. I'm guessing it's a Chromebook.
Yes, I'm sorry. I didn't explain that. The school was a recipient of a grant, and we were able to purchase Acer tablets for the students. So the students walk from class to class to class using these tablets. We are not what you would say 100% paperless environment, but we teach using Nearpod, which is a paperless tool to teach lessons in class to keep kids engaged. So there's a lot of digital work that's used, the materials that are used in the building. And so e-reading fits in just perfectly in our setting.
And I just think it will have a tremendous ripple effect on the savviness of students moving forth into the world to know how to navigate all of these resources at their fingertips. It's fabulous.
Yes, but I will say this, even though we are a big digital school, I still have a large percentage of students, more than half of the student body, that still prefers a print
Well,
book.
that's me. I still prefer a print.
Mhm.
I think
Me
there's something
too.
to be said and to hold it in my hands and reread and own it. There's something
Exactly.
really
Mhm.
beautiful about having that book and and just lingering with it. So I'm with
Exactly.
it too. Your commitment to advocacy and activism is something I've never experienced before with an educator I've known. I'd love to know about the librarianship, how it drives your work, and if you could speak to your shy school librarians, what did that work entail?
It was advocacy, but if anything, out of that experience, I learned a lot about how politics and education overlap and how sometimes it can be a very sticky situation.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the best way to put it. We didn't have a lot of wins in with shy school librarians. We didn't, but I think all of us walked away with some very strong skills that have helped us in other areas of librarianship. And many of us that were on that committee are doing some of us are still in school libraries, some of us are in
Mm.
administration, and some of us are working for one is working for a national organization but is dealing with libraries. But at the end of the day, we did raise the awareness within the Chicago public schools area that the district wasn't investing in school libraries, and it's still an
Mm.
ongoing argument. So we raised the awareness, and that was the biggest plus about that entire situation. We didn't win, but we raised the awareness, and I think that was really important.
I agree, and I think that if you always go into everything expecting to win, it's almost defeatist. It's looking at, what's our
Yes,
end game ultimately here, and how can we move the what is it? The arrow, or just baby steps.
the
The
needle.
needle, thank you. How
Mhm.
can we move the needle
Mhm.
and really get people's ear? Casey, what I find, so many people are not aware of these issues in education outside of the educational sector. Families that are invested, yes, but others may have no idea. So move that needle.
Mhm. Definitely.
You're incredible with rallying librarians across the DC district and getting support of allies like Washington Teachers Union, every library. How do you do that work? How do you continue to have the energy to advocate?
Well, first of all, what really pushes me energy wise is that it goes back to something very simple, which is where I was raised in suburban Chicago. I had a beautiful and thriving school and public library program. There were no barriers, there were no hindrances, nothing. And it was really funded very well. But what bothers me is working for Chicago Public Schools and now DC Public Schools is that there's a lot of barriers put in place and it goes down to zip code, essentially black and brown kids. So that's what gives me the drive and the energy to push forward because I look at it this way. If I had those experiences, I want these kids, even though they're not my own personal child, I want them to have those experiences too.
And it's about
Hmm.
access. It's all about access, and access is a huge barrier. You also are tremendous with social. You use social media to your advantage in a way that's brilliant with Twitter campaigns. Can you
Hmm.
speak to the read-in that you organized with other DCPS librarians?
Yeah, sure. The reading came about is that we wanted to do something that was of a protest nature because, this is Washington, D.C., the home of protests for crying out loud. But we also wanted to heighten and bring more attention to the lack of library programs in certain areas of the district. So taking a nod from some students, and this is something that a lot of people don't realize, and they think that the read-in was really a great success, and I came up with this idea. No, I didn't. I actually got this idea from some students in Chicago.
Ah,
Years ago, my friend Sarah Saig was the librarian at DuSable High School in Chicago, and they were threatening to close her
ah.
library and her position mid-year. The kids caught wind of it, got angry, and they decided to do a sit-in. Now, remember, these are high schoolers, and they're reading about the sit-ins from the
Yeah.
60s. So they said, we're not going to call this a sit-in. We're going to call this a read-in.
Ah.
So second period, they just came into her library. She's working with a class, and she said it was like 40 some kids in the beginning. Came in, grabbed a book, went out in the hallway and sat down on the floor and began to read and refused to leave until the district officers actually came from downtown and talked to them because the kids were on Twitter and they were tweeting pictures of them sitting in the
Yep.
hallway. effective, right?
Effective indeed.
So
Yeah.
my thing is, I look at it's a biblical verse for out of the mouth of babes. I just said, hey, we can do the same thing, but I did not want us to show up in front of the mayor's office where she works with cowbells and drums and tamarines making a lot of noise, and we could have been arrested. I'm just going to keep it
Yeah.
real. So we wanted to do something that was quiet and dignified. And we said, we're going to put the books up on
It's
display
beautiful.
on the steps of the mayor's office, and we're going to sit down and we're going to read silently. And they may not come out here, but guess what? The news reporters caught every single image of us sitting out there reading quietly.
I've seen pictures. It's so beautiful. It's moving, and it made me take pause, and the thought that went into how to protest to get a message across. I think that's something we're also trying to teach our youth.
Right.
There are ways to protest to be heard, and silent protest is a big way to be heard, ironically. Yeah.
Exactly.
I want
Yeah.
to end this episode highlighting the work that 2 years of your advocacy paid off this past summer with the DC Council. Can you speak to the unanimously approved $3.25 million amendment to the DC public school budget that went through?
And this is another backstory, too.
Please.
The backstory is that we decided as a collective group of librarians that we really needed to get the word out even further. By this time, we had been protesting and advocating for ourselves for a little over a year, and people were getting tired of hearing librarians talking. So we said, okay, we need to get our parents and community members more vocal.
Yes.
We scheduled meetings with each of the council members. And on those Zoom calls, because it was in the middle of the pandemic, we included a parent, a community member,
So
and a
smart.
child. And they spoke from their perspective of either my school has a librarian. If you were to take this librarian out of our school, this is what we would be missing. Or from the perspective of we don't have a librarian. We're looking at all of the programs going on across the city. This is what we want at our school, but we don't have it because we don't have a librarian. And we're very clear in our messaging. It's not just a body to fill the position, which many districts will do. They will call themselves saving money, and they'll just put a tech person or a paraprofessional in those positions. We said full-time certified
Yes.
librarian.
And yeah, that was huge.
And that's what really moved the needle,
Yeah.
in this situation was that, wait a minute, why is it that certain areas of the city get this type of heightened service and others don't? And this district has more than enough money to pay salaries of that employee that will bring those resources into the building.
Yes. It's brilliant.
Yeah.
And this restored full-time librarian positions in 36 schools
Yes.
in many underserved communities. It was huge. And then for that leadership work, you were recognized with ALA's Ethnic and Multicultural Information Exchange Roundtable Distinguished Librarian Award in 2021. So kudos to you.
Yeah, it was a beautiful honor to receive that, but it makes no sense. And it's just, at the end of the day, it's an inequity in service to kids that need it the most.
Yeah.
And that's what we were calling the district on at that time. And the council members saw it, especially those council members that were in areas of the city that were being impacted. They said, this isn't fair.
Yeah.
And even the council members that had the librarians in their area, they were saying it's not fair either to the kids as a whole.
Yeah, absolutely.
So people saw our point of view.
So I want to wrap this episode just thanking you for your tireless dedication to access to equity for our children. But it's not just the children, it's their caregivers, it's their grown-ups that are seeing what it takes to get things done. So thank you. Having you back for a second part too. So listeners, stay tuned.
Looking forward to it.
Thank you. Welcome to Solutions, where listening will leave you inspired by solutions to issues you or others you know may be struggling with in the public education system today. This is part 2 of an interview that began with episode 16. If you have not listened to that episode yet, I strongly suggest that you press pause right now and do just that. Listen to episode 16 from the beginning to have a proper introduction to Casey Boyd, a certified school library media specialist for over 20 years, as well as a school library activist, keynote speaker, book reviewer, and blogger. And if you have listened to that episode and have been waiting a week to hear more, get ready to continue being inspired by the boss librarian, Casey Boyd. Here we go. Hello, I am Olivia Wall. I am honored and excited to have Casey Boyd back with us for a second part 2 episode. This episode, we're going to jump into hearing more about how Casey miraculously balances the myriad of roles that she takes on in addition to being a librarian. These are some of the boards and committees that Casey is on. In 2021, American Librarian Association Chapter Council representing Washington, D.C., American Association of School Librarians Digital Tools Committee, American Library Association Center for the Future of Libraries Advisory Group, also Every Library Institute, as well as Executive Board, District of Columbia Library Association, Washington Teachers Union Equity Collaborative Committee, Executive Board for the Black Caucus to the American Library Association, also known as the ALA, in 2020, American Library Association's Newbery Selection Committee. Casey, how in the world do you balance all of these roles with family, with the commitment to your own school librarian role?
Very carefully. That's the best way I could say that, is that very, very carefully. And just understand that, you can be a part of a lot of organizations and committees and so forth, because some committees meet weekly, some bi-monthly, some quarterly. So that's how I have always been able to balance. It just gets a little hair raising at the end of the fiscal year or the calendar year when these organizations need to meet to get their final reports together. So that's when it gets a little
Yeah, I
crazy.
can imagine.
But it can be done. And at the end of the day, when you look at the bigger picture, what are we here? We're here for kids,
Yeah. I think I missed, you're also an ambassador for the News Literacy Project as
Yes, I
well.
am. I'm really passionate about that because I spent some time working in mass media before I entered into education. And it's important that our students need to be proficient users of news and be able to decipher between the news that is really exaggerated and news that is credible and reliable. And teaching kids the difference is something that I really enjoy discussing. And I've always been like that. And it's ironic that the News Literacy Project kind of dropped in my lap because I said, this is something that I've been doing all along. And now I get to do it with an organization that actually believes in the same thing. So that's the great part about working with them. And they're just a really great group of people, and they really get it that our kids are bombarded with a tremendous amount of
Yeah,
information,
it's incredible and scary.
but they just don't know how to figure it out. So that's why we're here to help them.
It makes so much sense that you're in that role, and
Hmm.
I think it's empowering. I wanna give a little bit of background around your current library. It was actually originally built in 1938, and then Jefferson
Hmm.
underwent a major renovation in 2019. You now manage a brand new 4,269 square foot library that features original glasswork, shelves along the modern print and digital collection with an impressive 37.6 books per student. That is absolutely incredible. How in the world do you cultivate and invest in books that create a culture of reading at all of those libraries?
Easy. I just listen to the kids. The kids will tell you what they're interested in and what they're not interested in. The kids will also help you drive the decision making in terms of additional resources that can be used in the program that they actually want to use. And then being attuned and very aware of what's in the curriculum, what the teachers are teaching. Now, this is my 5th year. I kind of know the teachers and what they teach every year, some of their favorite units that they like to teach with kids. And I try my best to provide those additional materials to support it. So having that relationship with the teachers as well. And then the third part is that being aware of what's going on in society, what our parents are struggling with students, what's going on in DC, that helps with making my purchasing decisions.
So, how do you communicate with students? How do they drop you a line to let you know the latest and greatest that they want to have access to?
I don't even have a box to say suggestions. I just have a relationship with kids where they can walk up to me and say, I want this book, or I don't like this series, but I like this series instead. So having that really close relationship with kids, even the ones that are mischievous and they're trying to ditch class and they try and hide in the library, and I kind of talk to them, they see that, okay, she's cool. I thought she was going to yell at me for ditching in her library, but she's cool. And then eventually those kids will come back and say, like, well, I like this particular basketball player. What do you think, Miss Boyd? Okay. All right, cool.
Yeah.
Let me see if I can find the latest nonfiction title, about this particular athlete. See, that's how it starts.
Yeah, and so I hear relationships are everything with students, with
Hmm.
families, with district leaders, with politicians, really thinking of how we move forward together by trying to listen to each other
Right.
and understand. I think right now in our country, and it's just not right now, it's been a very long, long time that people are not listening to each other and perspectives are just they're not heard.
Hmm.
It's everyone in their own box just listening to themselves. I have to ask you the question, what are your thoughts on the banning of books that's happening most recently and in the past? How are you navigating that?
It's really silly if you ask me. And the issue is not really the banned books per se. The issue is more so the banned books was pushed up, I think, to hide another real underlying issue that they wanted to use it as a diffusing mechanism why they were arguing another point or trying to get something else pushed
Yeah.
forward.
Yeah.
And they knew that this is something that people feel very strongly
So
about,
it would
you
strike a
know.
chord. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So at the end of the day, I've experienced the book ban before, and I would say 9 times out of 10, when you ask the parent or the community member, have you read the book in its entirety? No.
Isn't that terrifying?
Yes, and that's part of the challenge process is that we have to ask them, have you read the book? And then you give them the challenge forms to complete. And when you look at the form, and they're like, I didn't read the book. I just read the excerpts and I have a problem with
Mhm.
it. So it's very disheartening, and it's a form of censorship, especially with our kids that are Black and brown, also that are kids that are LGBTQ plus. These are books that affirm them
Mhm.
and they make them feel like they're of value and they're respected in our society. And we're sending some really strong and very negative messaging to them, and that's what really concerns me.
I've had the privilege of interviewing Morgan Jackson, an English teacher in Las Vegas, Nevada, and her words continue to bounce in my mind of when you remove a book from a library and that book has representation of students in your
Hmm.
community, you're saying you don't think the student fits in that community as well. And it's really just, it's scary what's happening.
But see, this is the other problem that we're having in school librarianship is that, prior to these mass book bans that have taken place since last year, some districts have put a warm body
Mhm.
into the library program. And in many cases, there'll be an English teacher,
Yes.
because they think that the English teacher will be a good fit. And I'm not throwing shade because I have colleagues that are former English teachers that are now certified librarians. There's no problem with that. But get your certification. That's the thing. And because you have these people that are sitting in the library positions, whether they be a classroom teacher or either a para, they've not been formally trained. And then a challenge comes their way. And because they don't want to deal with the backlash from the community, they put the book on
Yeah.
vacation. And so we have been hearing as certified librarians that there are some non certified librarians that are sitting in these library programs that have put these books on vacation. So when organizations see this, then they're thinking, oh, okay, this is how we can push this issue even further. But the book never should have been removed from the
In
collection
the first
without
place.
going through that reconsideration process. And that's why we have American Library Association's Office of Intellectual Freedom. This is why we have Every Library, which is a political organization that supports libraries. And between these two organizations, they help us fight these good fights that we should be having for kids.
What I'm hearing you say is obviously there should be certified librarians in every building.
Exactly.
If that is not a possibility because we're dealing with reality right now in this moment, there are organizations out there to support those folks, to feel like someone has their back out there in the universe. That's good to know. I'm learning so much from you. The way I'd love to wrap this episode is by hearing more around your digital literacy initiatives. It's amazing. You have the Read poster project that you've taken on with students. How have you worked to elevate digital literacy to running your popular Makerspace program that attracts more kids into the library?
Yeah, it does. It does because kids are naturally curious and kids love to do a lot of hands-on activities in class. And honestly, no shade again. Our K-12 system has turned into a test prep, test taking kind of environment. So when you present kids with hands-on activities where they can work in groups and talk and think things out and figure it out, they really enjoy stuff like that. But a lot of my activities like tween coloring, bracelet making, things like that. These are very calming
Yeah.
activities for kids. And some of our kids come to school highly stressed. This is, we're still in the pandemic. We have kids that are dealing with a lot of anxiety issues, a lot of trauma, post trauma and current trauma. So sometimes that experience can just be so helpful to a young
Yeah.
person. I have some kids that will not participate, but they will sit off in the corner and they'll watch the other kids. And, as much as I've tried to get them to get involved, they're just happy sitting in this stress free environment and just being quiet and
That
watching.
speaks volumes.
So I have a lot of different types of kids with different issues, and I've learned not to push them. I've learned to observe them and support them as best way I can. And if you want to be the leader or you want to sit in the back seat and either way, you have a place and your voice is valid here. So that's my thing with the program. And yes, the digital literacy has been a great plus. I've had to get some funding outside of the school district because unfortunately my district does not support or fund the Makerspace program. So I've had to use Donors Choose, some private organizations, and I'm thankful to God for them because through that generosity, I've been able to bring some dynamite activities into the program.
Speak to the activities.
Some of them, like you named, the Read program, and the Read program has gone in different directions because the kids are using Canva like crazy. Now that is a district
Yeah.
tool, which I'm very happy we're able to use. But I also think about some of the other projects, like we just did one that was pretty big, it's called Divine Justice, and it's on my social media pages now. And it is a tribute to all of the female justices of the Supreme Court.
Bravo.
And given that yesterday was a real big day for Ketanji Brown Jackson,
Yes.
we were waiting to finish up the project and post it online. But see, buying those materials to put that together, like the actual mannequin and everything, that costs
Yes,
money.
it does.
You know? So I'm really geeked about that because the kids love doing stuff like that, putting things together, making things that have a meaning, and they really send an indelible message, but not just about themselves, but they were also just a part of creating that message.
Absolutely.
So that's what really drives me and keeps me going every day.
It's wonderful. And I know too that you continued your Makerspace projects virtually when you were out during the pandemic, and the kids learned what was the project? It's a 3D intersection project.
Yeah, it was a 3D intersection because we said it eventually, when everybody's out and the pandemic is over, this is what we were thinking at the time. People are going to be walking and running around like crazy. How can we create a intersection that's safe not only for pedestrians but for animals too?
I love it. Yeah.
And so that's how that came about. So they came up with some really interesting intersection designs, so it called for them to kind of become an architect as well, and a civil engineer. Hmm.
So I also, as I mentioned, you're all over social media and you are really smart how you use it. Could you speak to the Clubhouse chat group, Boss Librarian and Friends, how you use that as a platform?
Yeah, sure. What I have learned in my years of serving as a school librarian is that meeting librarians from across the country, some of them are a part of a big district library group that has professional development. But then there's some districts where they are the sole librarian for K-12, or they don't have professional development funds, or the librarian is looped in with the ELA department and nothing about their program or their skills is really
Yes.
addressed. So I find that having a weekly chat where we have different topics that is laser focused for school librarians has been helpful to other librarians. I've always had mannequins in my library, but as a result of being in the clubhouse and meeting Tamiko Lawrence, for example, she designed this wonderful mannequin display for Women's History Month. And I said, well, I'm going to make mine called Divine
Yeah.
Justices. You see what I'm
Yes.
saying? Essentially, what Clubhouse is, it's an interactive podcast program. So just think about listening to a podcast, but you can actually talk to the podcaster while it's being broadcasted. That's what Clubhouse is. Yeah.
I investigated it a bit. I need to learn more about it. I'm just so impressed with all of the different platforms you are savvy with. It's incredible. I can't thank you enough for your time. If you had to leave with two pieces of advice for folks out there that want to become certified librarians, what would you say is their next step? What could they do?
Well, understanding that, do not buy into even what educators are saying that it's a dying field. It's not a dying field. This is a beautiful field. It continues to grow. We're needed more than ever before in K-12 school system. And I'll say this, I'm a school librarian and it's the best job on the planet. I've done a lot of different other jobs prior to working professionally after college. But this job has given me the most personal fulfillment, joy, and happiness than any other job I have had. So I would say join us. We need more people that will be advocates for children.
Yeah.
And you will find that this will be a field that when you give to it, it gives more back to you threefold. It really does.
I can't say thank you enough for you being willing to be a guest. Two-part interview, 2 episodes. I will include as many details as possible in the show notes. Your repertoire is so expansive, it's going to be impossible to fit everything in. The good news for listeners, you have a gorgeous website, caseyboyd.com. I can give a brief synopsis, but your website is just a plethora of resources and the best way I would guess to get in touch with you moving forward.
It is. Yeah, don't DM me on any social media account. It'll take me 2 or 3 weeks to get back to you.
Well, I can't thank you enough for your time on your spring break, no less. And I am grateful for you being an advocate for just the world of certified librarians, but the world of access and equity for our children. Thank you so much, Casey.
You're quite welcome. And thank you for inviting me on your podcast.
Absolutely.